Good morning. Thank you all for being here this morning to hear about our Hopkinsville housing study. In summary, we appreciate each and every one of you being here. If you don't have a packet, let us know. We'll make sure you get them. We will get them for you. Diane Turner and them are working on that right now. But this housing study is part of our Growing Home program. We have to grow home, and this is our home, Hopkinsville. And we need more homes here. We need the affordable home. What is an affordable home? For that, that's each person, that is a different situation for everyone on that. What's affordable for me might not be affordable for you, or vice versa. But with this housing study, we have looked at what we need, how we need, and where we're going to make it grow. Yes, we all know we need homes. The realtors know we need homes. You look at the houses that we have on the market that are available or not available. We do know we need houses. We need new ones. We need people buying new homes. We need older houses for sale. So that being said, we need to work on the housing stock that we have here today too. On that is fixing up some of our older homes and making them better for people to buy and more people to move into. You know, 51% rental is hard to say that's a great thing to be. Rental property is good. I understand that. I understand that well. But I also want a person to be able to own their own home too. And that makes property values go up on top of that. But that being said, I will bring Troy Body to this podium and let him speak just a minute. And we'll go for that and do the introductions for Mr. Patrick Ball.
Started meeting with various groups like HYPE and everything, and every group we go to when we introduce them around town, housing always became the topic. And you guys know if it wasn't housing, it'd become homeless. Then once we got on that ship went in the direction it went in, but housing was a common theme. And you know, housing touches everything from economic development or crime or growth or anything that we try to do. So we had a lot of conversations, but we didn't have a plan. We didn't have really stats. We were talking from our gut, and we started asking around the state of Kentucky and various other city managers across the state, give me a name. And Patrick's name kept coming up from Moorhead to Owensboro to Bowling Green to Evansville to even the state of Kentucky just hired them to do their survey. So we reached out to Patrick and started putting a framework together. We wanted them to talk to industrial parks. We wanted them to talk to Fort Campbell. We want them to talk to nonprofits and various agencies, also to work very heavily with Tom Britton and CDS, our codes enforcement team, Public Works, so that it was very germane, very targeted and a specific report that we could actually use and build on to go somewhere from here, because this isn't going to go away. This is primary number one issue that we've got to get our hands around. We've got to have a plan. We've got to be very specific about it. So he came with a lot of recommendations, a lot of knowledge, and he's given us a very good report. We've asked him for 20 minutes or so to go over it. And if at the end, if you've got questions, we got a microphone. This report is online. They're making more copies. We underestimated how many people would grab copies, so they're making more copies right now. And by the time he's finished, there'll be more at the back, and we'll put more information out. So I'm happy to introduce Patrick Bowen from Bowen National here to give you a summary of his survey for Hopkinsville.
All right, well, good morning. First off, I know there's folks standing in the back. There's a handful of seats right here in the front row, so don't hesitate to come on up here. And but like as Troy said, this will be a fairly short presentation. There's some spots up here, folks. All right, well, I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to present this study to you today. The focus of the study is on Hopkinsville, but to give some understanding of what's happening in Hopkinsville, why would somebody choose to live here or not, we wanted to at least give some context to that, so we looked at the rest of the county as well. So you're going to see in this presentation references to Hopkinsville, the primary study area, and then you'll see the secondary study area. That's the balance of Christian County. So, and then you'll see, if not in the presentation, you'll certainly see in the study itself data on the state of Kentucky. Again, to give you some perspective. If we have this growth rate, if we have this poverty rate, if we have this median household income level, some of the data that I'm going to show you here today, is that high? Is that low? Are we trending faster in certain categories as relative to the state, the rest of the county? So you'll have those kind of comparisons in the study, and some of those here in this presentation. All right, so this is the scope of work. There's a lot of things we can do, but Troy and folks here in the city gave us a specific work elements that they wanted us to cover. So we looked at a lot of demographics, economics, because it's a housing study. We do look at housing supply. So we looked at your rental supply, your for sale housing stock, what you have coming online, whether it's under construction or planned. We also spent a good amount of time on residential blight, so I'll show you some of the stuff that we found there. We did get some good community input, whether it was stakeholders or employers. We had about 44 people participate in the survey, so I'll share with you some of those results. And then we have housing gap estimates. Basically, what's the need for housing? How many units to solve your local housing issues now, but also in the years ahead? And we did that for both rental and for sale housing at different affordability levels. And then we have some broad recommendations. Ultimately, the community itself is going to have to decide its path, what kind of things it should do, could do, and is willing to do. Obviously, the leaders of this community, but as well as the citizens, will have a significant input, I would think, on what your actual path is. But we give you some broad recommendations to at least start that conversation. All right, so the study has a lot of population information. I'm not going to present any of that here today, because what I focus on, it's a housing study. And so what I try to address and look into is households, right? 2 or 3 people living in a household. I want to understand that household, because that household drives needs for housing units. They tell me where the challenges are, whether it's affordability or whatever, quality of the housing of that household. But as a family comes into this area, it's a household that's choosing that housing unit that's needed. So you're going to see me just talk just a few slides on households here. So one of the most basic ones is total households in Hopkinsville. The graph on the left-hand side, 2010 projected up through 2029. And I mentioned this last night as I spoke with council. That scale is a little misleading because the graph, it's such a small scale in terms of households that it looks like you lost a lot of households since 2010. You haven't. You've just lost a little over 100 households over that time. But where you are now in 2024, or at least last year, and where you're projected to go, now you start to see this trend starting to creep back up. Now, there's a great amount of opportunity for household growth here in Hopkinsville. I'll show you that. There's other reasons why this community can grow and expand. It just depends on, again, what it is you're trying to be or become. And housing is one of the things I think, in my opinion, if I do my job right here today and in the study itself, you'll see there's opportunities to be more, to grow more, again, if that is what you all seek. All right, this is households by age group, changes from 2024 to 2029. So you can see the different age groups, the younger households on the top, older households on the bottom. How's that expected to change over time? And you can see you have really 2 groups, that age 35 to 44 group growing, and then anything over age 65. I will tell you this is no different than what we see in most markets around the country. We have 2 waves of household groups going through, the baby boomers and the millennials. And so that's happening in here in Hopkinsville. The other thing to make sure people understand, and I'll just take the age 75 and older, increasing by 293 households. That doesn't mean you have 293 senior households coming here. You have some moving into the area. A lot of that is just seniors you already have. They're just aging in place. Over the next 5 years, they're going to move from one age group, that 65 to 74, up into that 75 and older age group. So some of this is just shifting of households changing over time. Some of this is people relocating to the area. But nonetheless, what this tells you is you've got a couple housing segments that are changing that will affect your housing needs as you all move forward in the next few years, and particularly on that senior housing piece. All right, we have 2 data points in here. It's renter households shown in the dark blue, owner households shown in the royal blue. It's a change from 2024 to 2029, lower income households on the top, higher income households on the bottom. So where's most of the change expected? For the owners, again, in that royal blue, it's in those households that make $50,000 or more. And for renters, dark blue, it's really those that make $60,000 or more. With most, and you could see clearly at the very bottom of that graph, the greatest change is expected among households that make $100,000 or more. So again, some of those will be people relocating here. I suspect some of that would be from people coming out of Nashville, Clarksville, places like that. But some of it will be people here. Their incomes will just grow over time because, again, this is a 5-year look forward. of how these households will change. So one, this is telling you you're going to have some moderate to higher income household growth. That's going to affect what type of housing you're going to need. But even though you have this projected decline among lower income households, what I caution folks, because they'll see that and go, why do we need affordable housing? You do. I'll show you what the numbers look like for some of the lower income households and some of the circumstances they live in. So you need a wide swath of housing at different affordability levels. But nonetheless, we factored this in as we look forward to projecting what your housing needs are. This one might be a little surprising to folks here. So this is, the map itself shows you about 14,000 people that commute in to Hopkinsville every day. 2/3 of the people that work in this city don't live in this city. Now, there's a lot of reasons why somebody would commute in and work in a community but don't choose to live there. It could be taxes, schools, cultural, social, whatever it might be. But part of it is housing. And what I'll show you here in just a few minutes, you don't have a lot of housing that's available, whether it's rental or for sale. And while we didn't do a survey of your residents and or your people that are commuting into this area, I will tell you with confidence, we've surveyed probably about 10,000 people in the last couple of years in markets all over the country, markets just like yours, where we ask people that are commuting into a community where they work, would you live there if housing was available and affordable to you? And about 30, 40, some communities it gets to 50%. But people say, I would live there if they had the housing for me. And so when you see here in just a few minutes, if Patrick Bowen wanted to live here and I was commuting in all the time, what would I have to choose from? I don't have much. And so I do think housing, the lack of available housing and the lack of affordable housing for different income levels is absolutely holding this community back. You could grow much, much more than you are. And then just, I marked in that red box just to kind of show you the workers that are coming into this area. Most of them, more than half, are ages 30 to 54. And most of those have a monthly income of over $3,300, which is about $40,000 or more a year. So these are people that have good incomes that are coming in. And the other thing to think about, because I know some people are hesitant or concerned about growth, but if you want to think about it from an economic standpoint, these are 14,000 people that are coming in, working wages in your community, and short of them maybe buying lunch, getting gas, running some errands here, they're taking those revenues they earned in your community and they're taking it back home, right, and then spending it on bigger items. So this is an economic issue, and I'll show you what the workforce is going through. But you can see there is a connection. So even if somebody feels that housing maybe it shouldn't be a priority, but you feel that jobs are, the employers, how employers are doing and the health of the local businesses, if you care about those, then you do need to care about housing. All right, so these are wages of the most common occupations in the region. This region's big. It goes into the Clarksville area. But these are the top 35. I have about half on this slide and then half on the next slide because I couldn't fit them all in one slide. And I'll give you one example just so you know what you're looking at. We'll just take the top row, retail salespersons. So whether they're at the lower quartile of wages, meaning the bottom fourth, they make about $23,000 a year. Or at the median, meaning the midpoint, they make almost $29,000 a year. So what can they afford to rent? It's either anywhere from $576 to $722, depending again on which income we're looking at. How about home ownership? If they want to buy, they can afford a home of about $76,000 up to about $96,000. So you can see on this table all these different wages, the affordability of rents or home prices that they should be able to afford. If you look at the top left-hand side there, and I know for some folks it might be difficult to read the number, top left-hand side in that orange or yellowish box, the fair market rent, meaning what's a typical rent that basically the federal government's saying for this area should be, it's about $1,246 for a two-bedroom rental. For home ownership, this based on what we found that's available in this market, it's $229,000. Okay, so keep that in mind. As you can see, if I'm a retail salesperson that can afford a rent of $576, but fair market rent is $1,246, I have a problem. Anything you see in red on this table means that housing is not the typical housing that's available to rent or to buy. There's a lot of red on here. So what this is telling me, and ultimately telling you all, is your workforce is really struggling to be able to afford to live in this community. Now, one of the things I will caution folks on, because I try to be objective and on all this stuff, this is one wage earner, okay? There's a lot of households that have more than one wage earner. But what this is telling us is that you better have another wage earner in that house. You better have another income source if you want to reasonably be able to afford to live in this community. And one of the other things that I often mention to communities when we're talking about economics and the health of a community and housing, well, just think of this. Every time people are putting disproportionate amounts of their income towards their housing costs, I'm going to show you that in a second, that just means that's much less money that they have to spend at your stores, at your restaurants, and places like that, right? So again, housing and economics, they are tied together. And this is the rest of those occupations, the other half of those 35 or so. Again, a lot of red on here with very few exceptions of any of these common jobs in the area and those workers being able to afford to rent or to buy. All right, so two things, the other things that we look at is about the existing stock and the existing households. So on the left-hand side, I have substandard housing. So you have about 300 300 total households that live in units, and believe it or not, Hopkinsville and all across the United States, we have people living in units that lack complete indoor plumbing or kitchen facilities, which is federal definitions of what is substandard housing, or they're overcrowded, meaning 1.01 or more persons per room. So these are generally overcrowded housing units. So we have them. Hopkinsville, you have over 300 of these households. Not a big number, but tell it to those 300 households that are living in units that are below modern day living standards. So again, you have people that are living in housing they probably shouldn't be in, or at least those things would be updated, modernized, repaired, things like that. The other thing is, probably more importantly, is cost burden households. On the right-hand side, you have, 4,200 of those, more than 4,200 households living in that type of housing. That means those are households that pay over 30% of their income towards their housing costs. Again, it's a federal definition. When you pay over 30% of your income towards housing, that's considered too much. I'll give you another one. I didn't put it on the slide here, but it is in the study. You have about 1,400 households that are severe cost burden. That means people that pay over half. I don't know how many people in this room pay over half their income towards their housing. I hope none. But you have 1,400 in your community that pay over half of their income. Wrap your head around that for a second. What do those households have left to spend for other essentials, like transportation, health care, good food, whatever it might be, clothing, those kind of things. So you have people that are struggling financially with their housing costs. And again, I go back to what I said a moment ago, is the more they pay for housing, again, 1,400 households paying half their income towards housing costs, they don't have much to spend at your restaurants. They don't have much to spend at your retailers. So again, this is absolutely an economic issue and impacts your local economy and employers. All right, so what else do we collect? This is one of the things that's not as easily obtainable. This is where we contacted multifamily apartment property managers, management companies. We surveyed 42 in the entire county, 31 of those in Hopkinsville, so that's the top half of this table. And we broke it out by different types: market rate, tax credit, which tax credit in your area would serve a household generally about, I think, makes about $64,000 a year, down to roughly $40,000 a year, and then government subsidized, which would serve households that make less than $40,000 a year. I marked on the right-hand side in that red box the occupancy levels. There's a lot of stuff we provided in the report, a lot of things I looked at, but just on the basic high level, what is this telling me? Your overall occupancy rate for these rentals is at 97.6%. Is that good? Is that bad? Is that high? Is that low? You typically want to be about 94 to 96%. You want vacancies. Developers don't want vacancies, right? They want everything full, as they should. But for a community to have a healthy housing market, you want that to be 94 to 96%. You want vacant units so that as people get married, have kids, people are relocating to the area, the jobs are changing, the income is climbing, the income is dropping, whatever the circumstances might be, you want housing so people can move around freely in the community and so that you can attract people to come to the area. So at 97.6%, you have a very high occupancy rate, and that's not healthy for the market. The other thing to point out here is, where is all the vacancy? It's just in the market rate. There is anything that, again, operates under the tax credit or the government subsidized program, which is considered affordable housing. There's nothing available, nothing that we surveyed. And that goes for the rest of the county as well. The other thing that I thought was pretty telling is the bottom right-hand side. We had the wait list for all these properties. This is just the ones we surveyed in Hopkinsville for the tax credit program. About 785 households waiting to get in one of these units. You have another 1,154 trying to get into a government subsidized unit. So I showed you earlier that decline in projected renter households for some of the lower income households, but you have close to 2,000 households, not people, households waiting to get into affordable housing. So this is a need in the community, and a lot of these people that would qualify for that type of housing are those same people that I just showed you on those workforce numbers, right, that have those wages. So this is a bulk of your workforce waiting to get into housing that would be classified as affordable to them. Now, with that said, it doesn't mean you don't need market rate. Yes, you have growth in the higher income households, and even at a 95% occupancy rate for those market rate units, you're still going to need additional housing because that's where your growth is going to be. So you will have to add additional higher end market rate units. So from the development and investment community perspective, these are good data points for them to see. They know then there is a need for rental housing really across the whole spectrum of affordability. And I'll show you that at the end when I show you the housing gap numbers. And I thought this was useful just for one purpose. This shows you in dark blue, that's the tax credit median rent for these different bedroom, bathroom combinations. The royal blue is the market rate rents. And you can see tax credit's lower because of the way the program is structured. It is affordable. That's why so many people are waiting to get into those units. But one of the takeaways for me on this was you have a lot of rentals over $1,000 a month, so it would be difficult for some folks to afford. But what that's telling the development and investment community, hey, we can get some rent premiums, because there'll be some developers, that's all they want to build, rightfully so. They're going to want to build market rate rentals. You got some healthy rents that are being achieved in this market, and so that would be another metric that we'd want to make sure that the development community understands. Come to Hopkinsville. If you want to build market rate rentals, you can achieve some good rents here. All right, so if you can't rent any apartments, which again, there's not very many of those to choose from, what else can you rent? So this is everything else. So this is what we call non-conventional rentals. That's a single-family home, a duplex, a mobile home, anything like that. Anything that's not an apartment, non-conventional rental. And we have a bunch of data in the study, but what I wanted to show you about this segment is what did we find available? My staff is exceptional at this. I mean, it's what we do for a living. So while we probably didn't find every house, duplex, or whatever that might be available, we found 33 here in Hopkinsville, another 43 in the rest of the county. If I look at those 33 that are available here in Hopkinsville compared to all the non-conventional rentals in the city, you come back with a vacancy rate of about 0.6%. Where do you want that to be? Again, you want that to be about 4 or 6% vacant. You are so far below where you need to be. Even the rest of the county is at 0.8%. You want that to be 4 to 6%. So you can see a theme here, right? If I'm trying to rent up an apartment, I don't have any affordable stuff to choose from. There's nothing available. And even the market rate, somewhat limited. So let me go find something else to rent. The story is the same. There's limited availability for this type of rental housing. All right, how about home sales? Y'all hear stuff all the time in the news. You have family members. Maybe you've purchased a home over the last few years. So this is two things on this particular graph. This is the number of homes sold. That's the blue bar. So annual number of homes sold in Hopkinsville. And you can see where that climbed in 2022, leveled off in 2023. That's happening. That happened everywhere, across most markets across the country. Right when interest rates kicked in, everything kind of slowed down, sales activity, and even the median sales price, which is in the green line, the black numbers, median sales price kind of leveled off over that 2022-2023 period, just like everywhere else. But look what happened in 2024. Your home prices began to climb and climb rapidly, even the sales volume of how many homes were sold. So you can see home ownership for some folks would be out of reach because that's not, they can't afford a $200,000 or higher home. But you can see those prices just keep climbing and climbing, making it more of a challenge for people to purchase a home. Now again, let's flip that to developers and investors. This is a good sign, right? We have climbing prices, we have climbing demand, interest in this type of housing. So again, a positive indicator to the development community of, Hopkinsville is a place to build housing, for sale housing. All right, how about what's available? So 159 homes were available when we pulled this data in the entire county, 88 in the city, 71 in the rest of the county. In the graph, you can see I put the median list price for the PSA is the city, $229,000. And then the SSA, which is, again, the balance of the county, $245,000. So homes are a little bit more affordable in Hopkinsville versus the rest of the county. But you can see where much of that product is. It's in that $200,000 to $299,000 range, with some of it also in that $100,000 to $199,000 range. So one of the things I did, just like for the apartments and the non-conventional rentals, when you have 88 homes available in Hopkinsville, is that a lot? So what I did was I compared those homes with the entire home ownership market, and I came back with what we call, it's in that blue box there on the right, came back with an availability rate of 1.3%. Is that good? Is that bad? You want to be about 2 to 3%. The healthy market is in that 2 to 3% band. Because again, you want vacancies for a variety of renters to transition into home ownership, or again, people relocating to this area. So you want vacancies, you're below almost half of where you need to be at a minimum. So you can see a common theme, lack of available housing, which could be discouraging to some folks. This is bad news. No, it's bad in terms of a healthy housing market, but it's also telling you or telling others, we have opportunities in this county to develop housing. We need additional housing, both rental and for sale. And then one other thing I looked at for the available inventory is just how old it is, because again, I'm going to back up. You had this lot of product, a decent amount, relative to the entire housing stock, priced under $200,000. So I wanted to see why might that be. And so you do have a lot of older product here. So yes, if Patrick Bowen were to move here and I can only afford a home of $175,000, and we do, by the way, we break out the available inventory a lot of different ways, bedroom types, year built, all kind of ways. And so you'll see in more detail in the study, yes, I can buy a home here at $175,000, but there's a very good chance that home was built 70, 80 years ago. And while it's not universally true that every old house has a challenge in terms of quality, there's probably a good chance that it does, right? Weatherization issues, a roof, windows, maybe just some other plumbing, other issues that, yeah, I could have bought that house for $175,000, but I don't have the income to fix this house up to make it reasonably livable. So we do show that in the report. Another thing we were asked to look at is residential blight. So those would be homes that are in serious disrepair. Again, we're only looking at the exteriors. Code enforcement was incredibly helpful on this, as well as other groups, to give us some sense of code violations. But what our staff ultimately did was we drove every street in Hopkinsville. And so we just inventoried if we saw homes that had boarded up windows, missing roof shingles, steps missing or partially missing going up the porch, siding missing, whatever, even fire damage comes, whatever it might be. If it's blight, poor exterior conditions, we inventoried it. So we came back with 401 homes within the city. And so when I compare that with your entire housing stock, we came back with a blight rate of 2.8%. That is high. That is very high. I would say most markets that we see are below 1%, and I would say most of those are really below about 0.7%. So you're probably 4 times higher in terms of the blight rate that you have to most communities that we study. So I know you've done a lot of good things. I know there's a lot of programs that are available, so you're making your way to addressing blight, but you all have work to do in terms of the quality of housing. And so one of the benefits of having an outsider come and do this is that we inventory this, but we mapped everything also on just different scales of blight. So it allows the city a better tool to focus in, is there a street block, or areas where this is concentrated that we might make some efforts in addressing our residential blight. All right, you might find this interesting. This is community input. I just have a few more slides. This is community input. These are the stakeholders. So this would be elected officials, other community leaders. We asked them various questions. I only picked a handful here that I wanted to put in here in terms of the answers. And I'll only talk about a couple of these that I think are probably most critical. So housing issues that stakeholders tell us, no surprise, right? You saw the data in this presentation. It's limited availability and affordability are two of the big ones, as well as substandard housing. So stakeholders are echoing what we found in the data that we pulled together and things that we saw. What kind of housing is needed? Rentals under $1,250, homes for sale under $200,000, but also in that $200,000 to $300,000 range. Another one on here: common barriers to development, cost of land. That is not normal. Most times, it's cost of development is what we find. So it might be local taxes that didn't come up here. It's not government fees, things like that we would normally see. It was the cost of the land here is what stakeholders believe is a big challenge for holding back some housing development. And then the other is availability of land. That's another one we don't see near the top of the answers that we get. We see it among answers, but not near the top. And here it's the availability of what you have that people can develop on. This is employer survey. So we heard from 19 employers. I listed the types of employers on the left-hand side. These are not all the questions and answers that we had, but to me, these were probably the more eye-opening responses that we got. So we asked employers what housing issues their employees are facing. Again, you're hearing this over and over here today: availability of housing, affordability of housing, quality of housing. So those 3 pillars keep coming back as the same challenges employers are saying that's what their employees are facing. how about it, what is housing doing in terms of adversely impacting the employers? And so we asked them, again, there's a lot of things that impact local businesses, but this was specific. What's housing doing to you? And if it is adversely impacting you, in what way? And so 36%, almost 37% of the employers said, it's impacting my ability to attract workers. And that's pretty in line with markets that we've studied all over the country. But here's one that keeps climbing, and you guys are just another piece of evidence of what we see, and that is the difficulty retaining employees. So when we do these surveys pre-COVID, we'd ask, what is housing doing to you? Attracting employees was a big one, but retaining keeps climbing. So that retaining your current workforce, when we did this pre-COVID, probably less than 10%, less than 5% employers would say, hey, that's a problem for me. And it keeps climbing and climbing. So now 1 in 5 of your employers that we surveyed are telling us, I'm having a tough time holding, not just attracting workers, I'm having a tough time holding on to my employees because of housing. And so again, you can see one of the themes that I feel is important is, this is an economic issue. It is impacting your employers. And another one that I think is critical to understand is that third one, likelihood of hiring more employees if housing issues were addressed. So almost half of the employers said, yeah, if we can solve our local housing issues, whatever they may be, you saw many of those in the study here. Almost half of them said, I would hire more people. So again, you could even grow more economically if you can address your local housing issues. All right, so these are the housing gaps. So essentially the shortage of housing. If you want to solve everything, so these numbers could feel big to some folks, maybe not to others, but if you want to solve all your housing issues, meaning getting people out of substandard housing, making sure that we don't have people paying over half of their income towards housing costs, severe cost burden housing, addressing those vacancies. You don't have very many. You want more vacancies for a healthy market, so we need additional units. You're going to have some growth. You need more units. So all that gets factored in to say, look, we want to try to solve everything. These are what the numbers would look like. Rentals are on top. And again, this is over a 5-year period, 2024 to 2029. Rentals are on top. For sale on the bottom. The more affordable stuff is on the top half of each one of those two sections. So you can see the greatest need for rentals is rentals under $1,000, but there's still a need but over 500 units for anything between $1,000 and $2,400. So a great opportunity, a great need for a variety of rental housing. And look on the for sale side. Really, it's those top three on there. Anything priced under $321,000, big need, 400 to 500 units in each one of those segments. You need a lot of for sale housing in this community if you want it to be at the healthy market it can be, if you want to grow the way that you could grow. But even that higher stuff, over $321,000, you need roughly 184 housing units for executives and people with significantly high wages. So 3,100 units needed citywide, split almost evenly between rentals and home ownership, 1,500 each. And then this is the last slide here. These are just really broad recommendations. There's a lot of stuff you can do. So again, as I said in the beginning, you can set your own path. You can set your own priorities. So the very first recommendation is to start setting goals for the community. This study is armed with so much information. You saw part of that in that last slide in terms of those gaps. So you know where a certain type of housing is needed, rental versus for sale. But there's other information in the study too that talks about the quality of housing. So if one of the goals for the community was to put efforts, and this does not have to be the city's burden alone, but to address the quality of housing, do we try to preserve what we have? That probably should be a goal. You have numbers in the study for that. Is it family-oriented housing? Is it senior-oriented housing? You have numbers in the study for that. So this study's armed with so much information that depending on the dialogue you all want to have and trying to figure out where are our priorities, you're armed with that information. It's not just hearsay and things people feel. You have data that you can point to in the study that would help you make those decisions and start setting priorities. Capacity building, and I marked in bold print here, identifying a housing champion, meaning, look, again, the city can't do this on their own. The private sector has to be part of this. Nonprofit groups need to be part of this solution. But ultimately, somebody has to be spearheading housing efforts. Because I've seen too many communities around the country that get studies like ours done, and then it sits on the proverbial shelf, right? Today it's in your file on your computer. But it sits on the shelf, and nothing happens. Okay, we got a need, and we really feel like we got to address housing. But nobody takes the lead, right? And that can be many groups. Right? Whether it could be a task force, a housing coalition, do you bring a consultant in, not me, bring a consultant in that is well-versed in finance and programs and incentive programs, things like that. that can help start to steer, housing towards whatever the community's goals are. So there's many ways to do that. To me, if I was in charge, one of the things I would suggest to the community, I would have employers part of that discussion too, right? They're impacted by housing, but some of them could be part of the solution. So I would definitely bring employers to the discussion table to start talking about housing. We did not look at programs, policies, land use, or any of those kind of things for this particular study, but there are things that can be done. We put a link in the study for a website that's out there that gives you a ton of really good information on the pathway to different programs, just to learn about those programs and give examples of what those could be. That's my song that I need to get out of here. The fourth one on here, it's a weird song though for me to get out of here. It could have been something else, but the fourth one on here, as you guys have done some good things with trying to preserve what you have and dealing with the residential blight, but you can see your numbers are big, the challenge is large. And so you want to continue to do those things, addressing the quality of housing, and particularly some of the blight issues you have. And there's great roadmaps out there. We give a website. I mentioned yesterday, Huntington, West Virginia, to me, is a good one. It's very proactive. They're probably comparable in some ways to you all, and in many ways to you all. And so it's a good one to at least look at because they are trying to address their blight, as I know you are as well. So another one to look at, but there's other resources and cities out there that are trying to do something. The fifth one on here is formulating education outreach campaign. We're doing part of that right now, right? Last night, part of that. Talking to council, talking to the public. I suspect a lot of you are here because you are advocates for housing in some capacity. And so we want people to understand what's the data? What does it look like? Where are we heading as a community? What kind of things should we be thinking about as we plan for the future? But there's other education outreach things you can do besides presentations like this. Again, development partnerships. This is not a city-alone burden, so there are a lot of groups out there that can be part of the solution. I mentioned employers, but there's developers out there, profit and nonprofit, that can be part of this, lenders that can be part of this discussion. But you want to start to explore who's out there that could be part of the solution, and I have a lot of suggestions and ideas, examples I can give you all if that's something you want to pursue. Marketing, the potential for development here. There's a lot, again, I said this probably a couple times now. There's a lot of daunting information in here for the housing, which could be discouraging and feel like, wow, we got some challenges ahead of us. But this thing is so armed with some really good information now that we work with probably over 500 developers around the country all the time, and they're looking for markets. You all got a housing study done. So I hope you market this to folks. I sure as heck am going to share this with the developers I know. I said, go to Hopkinsville. You don't have to start to try to learn about the community. They've got data for which we have compiled, but they're very proactive. Their arms are open to looking and exploring at residential development. But you can do a lot of really cool marketing things, and again, I could talk at length about that to promote what exists here in this community and why this is a good community to invest in and build housing. And then I put this last one on here. I don't normally do this, but again, I think your numbers are so big in terms of how many people are commuting in. So at some point, I hope that you all have abundant housing available, that you could start to attract a lot of these people that would come in and absolutely live. They're working here. They know Hopkinsville. I promise you some of those people would want to live here if they had the housing that would fit their family's needs, their financial needs. And so with that said, that's all I have, I think. And then I have got my contact information, so if you wanted to reach me, you can do that. And I'll start to answer any questions that you have. Troy, is that what we want to do next? And by the way, I'll stick around too, so if you just want to come up one-on-one and talk with me, you can do that. Yes, ma'am.
Of the 14,000 people traveling into the city to work, how many of those are residents of Christian County as a whole, and how many are coming from other counties into the city to work?
I don't know that. I can get that. I was actually talking to Troy this morning a little bit about that, and I had to go check my study. It's interesting that you asked me that question, because there's only one thing I checked in my study, and it was that topic. I wanted to know where people are coming from, not just from the rest of the county, but also the adjacent counties or municipalities, how many are coming across state lines and stuff like that. So that is something I can get, and we can certainly do an addendum or something like that to tell you what it is, but we didn't look at that. Good question.
Just to add some context to that, because we were having the same conversation, we track similar data with the Economic Development Council, but we have been tracking it by county level, and there's about 13,000 that come into the county from a neighboring county, and about 8,000 on a day that go out from the county to the neighboring county to work. So similar numbers, but that gives you a little bit more clarity as to the real gap issue of people coming into the community but living somewhere else. And the vast majority of a single source of location comes from Montgomery County, but then you get a lot of that spread out between Trigg, Todd, Hopkins, Caldwell, Muhlenberg, so forth and so on.
Yeah, so, okay, so that sounds like that is probably a piece that we want to add, maybe not put it in the study and revise it unless you want me to, but we can definitely issue like a short memo just to say, hey, here's some other piece of data to help understand who's coming here to work.
Thank you very much for the presentation. On the screen, you showed the legacy community. How can, and what do we need to do to get it to that 1%?
In terms of blight, getting blight down, is that what you're talking about? Getting residential blight down to 1%? So I'd
Yes.
say most communities it's
Yes.
less than 1%. So again, the city's doing a lot of things, but there can be more that can be done. That would be a long discussion to have, because there are a lot of paths. There really are. And that's a good thing for a lot of this stuff. Like if you're trying to support senior housing, there's a lot of ways to do that. So residential blight, there's a lot of, the good news is there's a lot of ways to start to address it. Some of it could be just basic cosmetic stuff. Some of it could be major investment and funds available, particularly for lower income households that can't afford to put money back in their homes. Senior citizens, I see a lot of, you probably, maybe you even have it here, I don't know. For seniors that are on fixed incomes and they want to fix their hanging gutters and things like that, but we got to fix some of this stuff. I don't have the money for it, so there's a lot of programs that are out there. So, but an array of tactics that can be done. In fact, there's a, let me try to get you that link, Troy. I don't think I put it in the study, but maybe we did. I think I might put it in the study. If you look in the study, I think I put bullet points, and then when I had the links to sources that address blight, it's in there. So that you at least have that to look at, but even that is like scratching the surface of what could be done.
Out of the number of housing that we need, whether it's rental or for sale, do you have numbers on bedroom counts that are needed?
No, that gets more refined, and sometimes it's up to the developer of like what are they bringing in, and if it's really marketable, more people might, and affordable, more people might choose a 3-bedroom than what they, maybe really they needed. And so some of it's going to be on the developers, but we didn't break it out that way. I will tell you, I do have data. I don't know that I put it in the study, but we do have data on household sizes, how many one person, 2-person, 3-person, and so forth, that would help guide somebody on, okay, do we need more 2 bedrooms? Do we need more 3 bedrooms? Is that in the rental side? Is it in the for sale housing stock? So we do have data that would guide somebody. I don't know that I put that in the study, but if you reach out to me and say, hey, Patrick, I would like to know, because we're trying to make some decisions for your organization, or for, I want to talk to the city or whatever, we can arm you with that kind of information so you can make an informed decision. And that's true for a lot of the data. Again, there's a lot we collected that I just couldn't get into the report. It's a long report as is, and there may be one person in the entire audience that needs that data or would like to know. So there's a point where I had to stop. But we have a lot of data. It doesn't hurt for you to reach out to me and say, hey, do you have this? Did you collect this? Or how can we find this data?
How would a TIP district serve Hopkinsville? That'd be an added benefit.
Yeah, we didn't look at programs, and I'm not overly versed on TIF districts to probably comment on why that could work. But I will tell you, I've seen a lot of communities use TIF districts, establish them, and to the benefit of the community. But again, I'm not versed enough to probably answer that.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You had mentioned that there was an outlier here with the land. The availability, the cost of the land is a little bit strange in comparison to what you typically do across the country. My question is that an indicator of something deeper? For example, if we have our typical zoning regulations that have been put in place that don't allow for the proper context, like higher density in certain areas or certain parts of town. Did you look at that at all, or could you weigh in on that?
Yeah, so both of those, in terms of land use and land use policy, we did not study that for this. Another thing we didn't look at, I know the city keeps track of, for your land bank, keeps track of some of the land parcels that are available, but we didn't study what you have available in terms of either vacant parcels, or I suspect you have some old buildings here that could be converted into housing, an old church, school, office, or something like that. So those are valuable things that could be studied moving forward or inventoried moving forward. Again, density is a sensitive topic in some communities. But density can absolutely be a tool to kind of, if you really, in big numbers, if you really want to go at it and start to add housing, density is one of the ways to do that. And zoning would be a mechanism to, to change some of your density. But I'm not qualified to provide an opinion here, especially since I didn't study it.
To address the blight issue, based on your experience with other Kentucky communities, would it be beneficial for city council or maybe fiscal court to begin to look at the passage of ULTRA, Uniform Landlord Tenant Act?
I am vaguely familiar with that provision. I'll let Troy speak to anything that the city. Okay. No comment. But I guess that echoes the point I said before too, is there are a lot of things that can be done to address blight. It's just a matter this community has to start picking and prioritizing, because it is a challenge for this community. These are great questions, by the way.
There's a menu this long of items that ask them specifically to study. Some of you asked the question. We asked them to work with the industrial parks, for example, and just general information. There are cities like Evansville, Indiana, that hire them every year to come back and do different things. So the mayor and the council are so inclined, hire them again next year. If there's some more specific questions that you have, this is just a beginning. It's probably the board question.
Which is fine. Let me add this. So I drove down here yesterday. My wife did the driving, and I said, "Hey, the media is here, are going to be here possibly." And I said, "Why don't you ask me some questions? Like, what could the media ask?" And she goes, "Okay." And she starts asking me questions. Every question she asked, we didn't study. She's like, "Could you tell us about the land that's available?" And I go, "We didn't study that." And so, like, she asked me another one. What about the cost of development? How much does it cost here? And is that high or low? I was like, "Oh, we didn't study that." So she gets like the fourth one. She's like, "Mr. Bowen, what did you study?" So it gets to what Troy was saying. Look, we can do a lot of things. We were given a specific scope. There was a healthy budget that was put towards this effort. But what this allows you to do, at least, is to start to set some priorities now. At least you know some areas where you've got some challenges. You also can see, where are you heading? You see those projections for 2029. So now you at least know, here's the future. It's coming at us. And you can alter that, right? You can grow faster. You can have more seniors move to this area for various reasons, more workers or whatever. So you control some of that destiny that's coming towards you, but at least you know, if all things stay as they are, here's where we're heading as a community. Mr.
Thank
Mayor?
you.
All
Mr.
right.
Bowen, we appreciate
Thank
you
you.
being here today. Thank you so very much, and we appreciate the study. Now, that being said, we're not just going to lay this on the shelf. This is something that we're going to be looking at, studying, and moving forward. And he will probably be back within a year and a half, because we have to know where we're going and how we're going with this. On this, though, we've already got a lot of things going on with growing home and cleaning up the neighborhoods and pushing on old houses that are dilapidated with code enforcement, trying to get them to clean them up and move forward or tear them down. But, as I tell everybody, this is a we thing, not a me thing. So we have to work together, from the contractors, the realtors, investors, everyone around. I want to say this is a we thing, and we need your help. You are working and making our community look brighter and better every day, but I want to continue that to grow, and I need your help. And I appreciate all of you being here today to listen and learn. And we do have more packets. If you did not get one, Amanda and Anna and them got all them for us a while ago. So if you please pick that up, and we do have it online. So let us know what you need, or give my office a call on your concerns and questions. Let us know how we can make it work, because Hopkinsville is the best place to live.